Ever bought a budget gaming PC that promised 1080p glory, only to watch your favorite titles stumble at the loading screen and force you to turn down every setting? I've been there, and that disappointment lingers long after the warranty expires. The fear of repeating that mistake makes the decision to spend a few hundred more feel like a gamble. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. And today I'm going to walk through why the ASUS ROG Strix G16CH might be that smarter gamble or why it could still leave you shaking your head. First off, let's talk about the real-world environment you'll be dropping this machine into. It's a mid-tower that looks like a typical ROG case, angular lines, a subtle RGB strip, and enough ventilation to keep a high-end CPU from throttling under load. When you plug it into a standard 120V outlet, the power supply rated at 750 watts spins up without any audible pop, and the system boots into Windows 11 Pro within 10 seconds. That first boot speed is a nice psychological win. You're not staring at a black screen while the OS loads the background. Now, the headline specs: i9-13900KS, 64GB DDR5, RTX 4060 Ti, 1TB NVMe sound like a fantasy squad for 4K gaming. But the true test is how they behave in everyday scenarios. I ran a few typical sessions that most gamers go through. In a just after work session, I launched Warzone, dropped into a match, and kept the graphics preset at high with DLSS on. Frame rates hovered in the low 90s, and the system never hiccuped, even when the map filled with dozens of players and explosions. The 64GB of RAM felt overkill for a single game. But the real benefit showed up when I switched to a multitasking grind. I had Warzone running in a window, a Discord call, a Chrome tab with a YouTube tutorial, and a background recording of my gameplay. The frame rate dipped by only a few frames, and there was no stutter. For creators who stream while they play, that headroom is a genuine advantage, not just a brag-about numbers point. The RTX 4060 Ti is the sweet spot for 1440p gaming with ray tracing. And that's where the Strix G16CH shines. I tried Cyberpunk 2077 with ray tracing set to medium and DLSS performance. The visual fidelity was impressive, reflections on wet streets looked convincing, and the lighting on neon signs popped while the average FPS stayed around 70. If you push to ultra settings, the frame rate slides down to the mid-50s, which is still playable for most. But you'll need to decide if you want those extra visual bells and whistles or a steadier flow. The 8GB of dedicated GDDR6 memory isn't a bottleneck for these titles, but it's worth noting that the card cap's at 8GB, so future titles that push beyond that limit may see texture pop-ins sooner than on a 12GB or 16GB model. Storage is a double-edged sword here. A 1TB NVMe SSD loads games in seconds, and the OS boots in a flash, but the capacity can feel tight if you maintain a library of large AAA titles. Each modern game can easily consume 80,100 GB, so after about 8 titles you're flirting with the need more space line. The good news is the chassis has an extra 2.5-inch bay and 2 M.2 slots, so adding a second SSD is straightforward, but that's an extra cost you'll need to factor in if you're planning to keep everything locally. Connectivity is another practical area where the Strix G16CH earns points. Wi-Fi 6E gives you a solid wireless backbone, especially if you're in a house with many devices competing for bandwidth. I tested it with a 2 gigabits per second fiber line. The speeds reported in the router's admin panel matched what I saw on a wired Ethernet connection, which is rare for a wireless setup. Bluetooth 5.3 handled a low-latency gaming mouse and a pair of wireless earbuds without dropouts, even when the PC was under heavy load. For those who prefer a clean desk without a tangle of cables, that wireless reliability is a genuine convenience. So, who should actually buy this machine? If you're a serious PC gamer who wants to play the latest titles at 1440p with ray tracing, stream at 1080p, or dabble in video editing without buying a separate workstation, the ROG Strix G16CH checks a lot of boxes. The massive 64GB of RAM is overkill for pure gaming, but it becomes useful if you edit 4K footage while the game runs in the background, or if you run virtual machines for testing mods. It also future-proofs you for the next generation of games that may demand more memory. The price point lands it in the premium mid-range, so if you have the budget for a solid all-in-one and want to avoid the hassle of building a PC from scratch, this is a compelling pick. On the flip side, you might want to skip this model if you're primarily a 1080p or 720p gamer who doesn't care about ray tracing, or if you already own a decent laptop that handles most titles at medium settings. The high-end CPU and massive RAM will sit idle, and you'll be paying for performance you never tap. Also,